In 66 AD, a Roman senator walked out of the Senate chamber. He did not make a speech. He did not raise his fist. He did not organize a resistance. He simply left. And that single act of leaving terrified the most powerful emperor in the world. Nero had executed his own mother. He had killed his wife. He had eliminated generals, senators, and advisors who crossed him openly. But a man who simply refused to participate, that he did not know how to answer. His name was Thrasea Paetus, and what he understood about power, silence, and resistance is something almost nobody talks about. Under Nero, the Roman Senate had become a performance, not a governing body, a theater. Senators were expected to applaud imperial decisions, to vote unanimously on measures they privately despised, to offer elaborate public praise for a man they knew was unstable, cruel, and increasingly detached from reality. The ones who played the game survived. The ones who resisted openly were destroyed. Most chose survival. They told themselves it was practical, that they could do more good by staying inside the system than by dying outside it. It was a reasonable argument. It was also the argument every compromised person makes to justify the next compromise. Thrasea Paetus was a Stoic senator who had been navigating this system for years. He was not reckless. He was not theatrical. He picked his moments carefully. When Nero had his mother Agrippina killed in 59 AD and sent a letter to the Senate justifying it, the Senate responded with relief and gratitude. They celebrated. They passed resolutions of thanksgiving. Thrasea walked out. He said nothing. He voted nothing. He simply was not there for the performance. And that absence planted a seed of something Nero had never encountered before. A man he could not read. Most people misunderstand what Thrasea was doing. They see a man avoiding confrontation, a man staying safe by staying quiet. That is not what was happening. In a system that ran entirely on visible participation, withdrawal was not neutrality. It was the most aggressive statement available. Nero's power depended on consensus, not genuine consensus, forced consensus, but the performance of it mattered enormously. When every senator applauded, the applause told the empire that the emperor was legitimate. When every senator voted in agreement, the vote told Rome that the decision was rational and supported. One man sitting still while everyone else moved broke the illusion. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. A lie that everyone performs together has a kind of social reality to it. The moment one person refuses to perform, the lie becomes visible. Thrasea understood this at a level that went beyond political strategy. It was Stoic philosophy applied to power. The Stoics taught that the only thing truly yours is your judgment, your assessment of what is true and what is false, your willingness to act in accordance with that assessment regardless of external pressure. Every time a senator applauded something he knew was wrong, he surrendered a piece of that judgment. Thrasea refused to surrender it, not in a single dramatic moment, in 100 small refusals over years. And if that idea is landing differently than you expected, this channel is built entirely around exactly this kind of thinking. Subscribe before the next chapter. What comes next is the part of this story that history books leave out. For years, Thrasea managed to exist in the margins, present enough not to be immediately targeted, absent enough to maintain his integrity. But silence in a paranoid system accumulates interest. Nero noticed, not with anger at first, with unease. There is an account from the historian Tacitus describing Nero's reaction to Thrasea. He said that Thrasea's very presence was a rebuke, that walking into a room where Thrasea sat felt like being judged. Think about what that means. Thrasea said nothing. He did nothing aggressive. He simply existed in a way that was internally consistent. And that consistency, that refusal to perform what he did not believe, radiated something that the emperor felt in his presence. A man who has sold his judgment looks different from a man who has not. Something in the posture, in the eyes, in the complete absence of the small, anxious adjustments that compromised people make constantly. Nero could not buy Thrasea's approval. He could not intimidate him into performing it, and he could not ignore what it meant that one man in his Senate refused to give it. So he did what paranoid power always does when it cannot co-opt someone. He waited for a reason, and eventually manufactured one. In 66 AD, Thrasea was formally accused. The charge was not rebellion, not conspiracy. The charge essentially was insufficient enthusiasm for Rome. He had not attended the Senate enough. He had not participated in public religious ceremonies. He had not been visible enough in his support of the imperial agenda. In other words, he had not performed. The trial was not a search for truth. It was a demonstration of power. Witnesses were brought who testified to his absences, his silences, his failures to applaud at the correct moments. Thrasea was not permitted to defend himself in person before the Senate. He sent a letter instead. In it, he said he was at peace, that he bore no ill will, that he was prepared for whatever came. The Senate convicted him. Nero sent word that he could choose his method of death. Thrasea was in his garden with friends when the message arrived. He did not panic. He did not attempt to flee. He had already prepared for this moment in the way that Stoics prepared for everything difficult, not by predicting it exactly, by training himself to face the worst version of any outcome without losing his footing. He opened his veins. As the blood flowed, he made a libation, an offering, and said that it was poured to Jupiter, the liberator. Then he turned to the young quaestor who had delivered Nero's sentence and was standing nearby, visibly shaken. He told him not to weep. He said, "Study the times we live in, but do not let them make you forget what virtue looks like." Those were among his last recorded words, a man dying by imperial order, teaching the man who delivered the order how to remain intact. Nero outlived Thrasea by 2 years. They were not good years. The executions had hollowed out the Senate completely. The men who remained were the ones who had proven they would perform anything, which meant Nero was surrounded entirely by people whose agreement meant nothing. He had no way of knowing what anyone actually thought, no way of knowing who was loyal and who was simply afraid. The performance of consensus had become so total that it had destroyed the information he needed to govern. In 68 AD, the legions revolted. The Senate declared him a public enemy. His guards abandoned him. Nero fled. He hid in a villa outside Rome. When it became clear there was no escape, he attempted suicide. He could not do it alone. He required a servant to help him. He died reportedly saying, What an artist dies in me. A man so captured by the performance of his own greatness that it was the last thing he thought about. Thrasea had walked out of the Senate to preserve the one thing that mattered. Nero had spent 2 decades consuming everyone around him to protect something. That turned out to be nothing. The man who said nothing won, not by surviving, by remaining himself when the pressure to become something else was absolute. The pressure Thrasea faced was extreme. Yours is not the same, but the mechanism is identical. Every system you exist inside, professional, social, personal, has its version of the mandatory applause. The meeting where everyone agrees with something nobody actually believes. The relationship where you perform a version of yourself that keeps the peace. The moment where staying silent about what you know is true feels like the reasonable choice. Thrasea did not resist because he was fearless. He resisted because he had practiced being internally consistent in small moments for so long that the large moment did not require a decision. It was already made. That is not a personality type. That is a practice. And it starts smaller than you think. Subscribe now, because this channel is built for people who want to understand what real resistance actually looks like, not the loud kind, the kind that makes a paranoid emperor uncomfortable just by being in the room. What comes next on this channel will take you further into that territory. Something about the way the most composed people in history trained themselves that almost nobody applies today. You will want to be here for it.